welcome to Isina Workshop. I'm Tatiana. Today I'm gonna work on some Star Wars inspired terrain for my husband's games. I hope everybody's doing well in quarantine, in confinement. We are lucky to be at my parents' place, which is a country house, so we have plenty of outside space, which I know right now it's a luxury. I like to use recycled materials, so I'm gonna use some leftovers from a package. I think this was from a toaster. I'm gonna use these top parts to do something like the Tatooine hubs, and I'm just gonna go around and use what I have in hand at my parents' place. I found a ball, so maybe I could use for the domes, and then I'm gonna paint. So let's see how it goes. So I start by cutting the piece of cardboard that we just saw with the rug knife. Sometimes I use the scissors because it could be more convenient. Just go with whatever you have. Trim all the bits and pieces that you don't think you're gonna use. Since I didn't want the houses to be too tall or like have high towers and then others some low, I tried to cut them more or less to fit the same height. I used the ping pong ball to make the dome on top of the houses. In some cases I use the base to glue it on, and others I just hot glue the whole thing. Here's a base example. I just cut a cardboard piece and added it there, and then added the ball on top. Since some of the house pieces, let's call it that way, had some holes, I corrected the ones I wanted, and I even gave some door illusion to a few, all with pieces that I cut out and hot glue. So after the houses were more or less constructed, I started to do some details like power boxes and cables, all with trimmings that I had from cutting the boxes itself. So I like to use everything that I just like waste, and instead I do the trim around the dome. I did some power cables, something like that, to give them a little more of a texture feeling and just real. Usually when I'm doing this, I try to place the trims before I glue them, just to give an idea of how I want them to look. And if I need a different size or to cut it a bit more, I can do that before I glue it. It's much easier to work that way. So after the houses look more or less done, I tried to create a base, and at first I tried to do a settlement all together in a piece of cardboard, and later on we're gonna see in the video that I actually cut them in two separate sections because they are easy to move, and I think in the gameplay it will be easier. So after these are done, it's time to add some texture and sand impression. So I start by doing that with glue and salt. It's a technique that you've seen me use in the dice tower in another video as well. So I just put a white glue, or in this case I used two types of glue and the famous Mod Podge, and then just salt, table salt, the thinnest. But as you saw in the dice tower, I have used sand before as well. It's just that this was the easiest. It was bad weather, so I just went into the kitchen. On to painting, and in order to create that shade of sandy beige, I mixed together those three colors, so a lot of white, a bit of yellow, and just a tiny bit of cities or a red kind of shade, just to give it a bit more sting. I mixed it a bit until I get the right shading, and it doesn't matter if it's a bit different or if your batch runs out and you have to do a new one, because since it has a lot of texture, it doesn't matter if it has some differences. For the doors, I used black to give a little deepness, and I used it on the power boxes as well, just to give a little detail, have something that catches the eye around it. After I added some details that I glued myself, I also kind of painted a few windows free-handed because I think they would look better in general. So after the paint is done and everything, I went and got myself a kitchen paint coffee because I think that it would give a nice wash and weathered feeling. So first I started baby steps, and I advise you to do the same if you want to try painting with coffee and all of that. That is to use it and then clean it with a tissue, the first layer, and then you see if you want it to be stronger or not so much. So I started very shy, and then as I moved along, I made it a bit more strong. Also, the coffee that I worked with was solvable coffee, so powder coffee that I mixed with a bit of water, just a little bit, and that's basically it. And it smells amazing, so it's pretty fun to work with. So once this part is all dry, including the salt and the glue that might take slightly longer, I dry brushed it white, all of it, also to add texture, and because my husband's mat for the game is snowy. So the theme is all snow, and all the dolls that he paints, I call them dolls, don't tell him. They are kind of snowy themed, and he has a bunch of snowy elements. So I did that to give it a frosty look. As you could see, I used mostly recycled materials, things that I had lying around at my parents' house, not even in mine, but you make do with what you have. That's what I like about it. Thank you for following along, and if you want more of these things, comment, subscribe, like, you know what to do. Bye!